Hello and welcome back to the TVBinges.com Pilot Roundtable, a Southgate Media Group podcast. I'm Kyle Tremblay, the editor of TVBinges.com, and I am joined as always by a fellow TV Binges writer. She's got 24 hours to discover my motivation for doing this podcast, or she'll be kicked out of the FBI. It's Olivia Richards. Hello.
Hey, I think we have to both look for our motivations.
I know.
It's search around.
It's the mystery of our lives. Finding the motivations. So we are ready to kick off week 2 of the fall season by talking about one of ABC's major premieres of the fall. It's the network's sexy romance mystery FBI drama procedural, Quantico. Olivia, what did you think of this pilot?
Oh, I love all the tags that went along with it, because that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like it had so much veneer, but like nothing underneath, and it made me. It's kind of what I was expecting, but again, watching it, I think I had read a review and somebody very aptly called it "How to Get Away with Murder Terrorist Edition."
Yes,
and that was very fitting, I think.
I will say every single piece of written word I've read about this show compares it to How to Get Away with Murder. And you know what? For good reason. Because this show, premise-wise, is How to Get Away with Murder. This is a Shonda Rhimes show that Shonda Rhimes has nothing to do with. It's, I think, ABC sort of dipping its toes in the water of living off the Shonda Rhimes brand, but without her being attached, and presumably taking up a lot of the money that they would make. And I would call the results mixed, and that's being very generous.
I was going to say messy, but I think mixed is the polite way of saying that.
I mean, it is, like, a pretty, like, at least it's not embarrassing, you know? I would say, like there's, I think it gets through the material okay, it introduces the mystery okay. It's hard to talk about this show without talking about Priyanka Chopra, the former Miss World winner, who is maybe the most famous movie star in India right now, but virtually unknown here, and is the star of this show. It's a very interesting casting choice. What did you think about her?
I thought she was, I thought she was with the rest of the cast, like, again, like, I wanted to like her in the role, and it's just, I felt like I was so mixed up in how fast the pilot was going that it got really hard to feel attached to any of the characters or actors that were on the show.
I agree with that assessment. I thought she was perfectly likable and very charismatic, and clearly a professional actor, which is more than I could say about some of the other younger actors on the show. But as soon as the first flash forward hit, and this was the complaint I had with How to Get Away with Murder, by the way, and so maybe it's just not a thing that I'm good at, but I was just lost. Like, I don't like that structure of TV show where we have a present day, but then we are flashing forward to a future day after some disaster has happened. In this case, it's that Grand Central Station has been blown up, and Priyanka Chopra's character is suspected of doing it, but her tough-as-nails supervisor knows that she didn't do it, and so she sets her free, and now she has to solve the mystery. And that's like the same setup as How to Get Away with Murder, except it was with a, guess what, murder in that show. But it just, like, that structure for me doesn't work. I don't like that storytelling structure. And I don't know. I mean, what did you think about the flash forwards?
Again, I'm in the same boat where I was so confused, because it's like they set up the characters of, like, in the same way that they did with How to Get Away with Murder, where it's like you see them in like a classroom setting, and like they're trying to just sort of get used to their environment, and you have like getting to know the people in charge of this whole thing, and it was so much happening, and then when you threw the flashbacks and flash forwards on top of it, it just got so mixed, and by the end I felt like I watched like 8 TV shows in like 60 minutes, but it was one TV show.
Yeah, I mean, the whole detour to the guy who shot one of the FBI people and then killed himself felt unnecessary to me. I don't know, like, what did that have to do with anything? I don't really understand why that was in here, and it's just an example of this show sort of getting a little too broad too early. That I don't know if we needed that. I don't know if that's something that you need to go to in your first hour when you're just setting up characters and stuff. And it felt like it moved at lightning speed. And again, How to Get Away with Murder felt the same way. But what this show is sadly missing that How to Get Away with Murder relied upon, and the whole reason that show worked and this show doesn't really work, is Viola Davis.
Absolutely.
That's the problem, right? Is that a Shonda Rhimes show is really only as good as its lead, and it's only as good as how much you like the lead and you want to see her kick some ass. And Priyanka Chopra, I think, is perfectly capable, but she isn't in that like Viola Davis, Kerry Washington kind of mold, where she's just gonna be someone who's like a master of the universe and running everything. Like she's a much more, despite her lack of name recognition and her unique background, she's a much more sort of traditional young hot lead for a show filled with young hot people. And
Yep.
that's, you can only go so far with that, I think.
No, exactly. And I'm just like, I think for me, one of the bigger undertones of the show too was like something that I'm really tired of seeing. And it's this whole, like terrorist plot. It's like I think, keep putting this in shows and it's like, but like we don't care about what's happening. It's just, it gets
Right.
so thrown in and then it's like, it's us versus them. And like, we have to stop the next plot. And like, it gets so tiring to watch and I think it just creates an atmosphere of something that kind of takes any sort of enjoyability out of the viewing experience.
That's a terrific point, and that's part of the cynicism of TV, I think, which is that national security issues and like Grand Central Station can be blown up and all of this. Those are all just sort of treated as setting here. It's very clear that what this show is interested in, is young hot people having sex and solving
Yep.
crimes. Like that's where this show's heart lies, and the whole FBI setting and all of that is very much backgrounded. And I feel like one of the reasons like the original CSI worked is that that's a show set in a city crime lab. Like the scope is very much toned down for procedural shows for good reason, because if a show isn't interested in engaging in any kind of national security debate, or despite all the references to 9/11 on the show, really engaging with any interesting ideas revolving around that, then it probably shouldn't have that be the setting. Like it's just an artificial way of increasing stakes, and it comes off to me here as kind of disjointed, given all the material with these young people and what the show is really about. And that I think that is part of the just part of what feels off about Quantico, is that the scope feels all wrong. It feels like a show that treats very important things and very major events without any kind of sense of gravity around them.
No, exactly. I completely agree. And I think that was the one thing that really, beyond the show just being very like fast paced and sort of disjointed, I think that was the one thing that really kind of threw me off and left me sort of like uneasy about what I was watching.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just a weird setting for a show. So this show got a ton of promotion. A and it was very interesting. This is one of the most interesting ratings ones to see because of the unique nature of the star of the show and how many people would tune in to see her, who maybe have never, like, who aren't normally represented in the nighttime cable viewing audience. And it did a 1.9 in the demo, which is pretty good, with 7.1 million viewers overall, which is again pretty good. I would consider that solid. Not, it's not a hit, but it's not like on the verge of being canceled. So those are interesting numbers for a show like this. ABC can't be too disappointed with that. So Olivia, what is your sense on the scale of canceled quickly, makes it through the season, or renewed for the next season?
I can see this one going probably for a full season, but I'm not sure it would make it into a second.
Yeah, it's definitely on that line right now between those two. Not having any more weeks of data points is interesting, because shows can always like perilously drop in their second week. Right now, I would probably lean towards it getting a second season. I think ABC's invested a lot in this. I think it likes the Shonda Rhimes vibe, and probably produce the show for cheaper than a Shonda Rhimes show costs, even though it's clearly a pretty expensive show. But just not having her name attached probably reduces costs significantly. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's a show that's clearly designed to go for a bunch of seasons. They probably want this show to go for 8 seasons. Um, who knows if it'll last that long? But I would suspect ABC is going to give this one the benefit of the doubt if the ratings are even remotely passable. and probably err on the side of passing it. I will say to people who are interested in this kind of setting, like a post 9/11 show about international issues, um, I don't know, Olivia, have you ever watched The Honorable Woman?
No, I haven't. It's on Netflix, and I think that you had recommended it before.
Yes, I'm going to recommend it again because
Yeah.
the reason that I recommended it before, I think, was with Allegiance, another show that
Yes,
deals with
that was
issues like
good.
this. Yeah, and so every time a show that deals with like national security issues comes up and doesn't do it very well, I will point people to The Honorable Woman, like you said, available on Netflix, super easy to watch now. Maggie Gyllenhaal, really fantastic series that is, I would say, more soapy than this series secretly, but is so smart and so like clever about how it doles out that soapiness that you don't even notice that you're watching a soap opera and you just think you're watching an awesome international thriller. And so for anyone who kind of wants a version of this show but maybe isn't into the how to get away with murder structure and maybe thinks it's a little bit tacky, The Honorable Woman is what I recommend. Okay, so back to Quantico. Final verdict, Olivia, thumbs up or thumbs down?
This is going to be another thumbs down for me. Yeah, it's not something that I'm interested in or that I necessarily want to see on television.
Me as well. I think that there was a way to do the show interestingly. Um, whether it was to change the setting, to tone it down a bit, or to make the show a little more engaged with its setting and maybe less about the hot young FBI agents and
Yeah,
more about national
absolutely.
security. You could go in one of those two directions, and I feel like the show landed in the middle where it's kind of just tactical for it. All right, so you've been listening to the Pilot Roundtable, a TVMinges.com and Southgate Media Group production. You can listen to all of our episodes on iTunes, where you can rate and review us. We'd appreciate that. Or find us at SouthgateMediaGroup.com. Follow Olivia on Twitter at Ricky'sOlivia, and me on Twitter at KyleLovesTV. Until next time.